or each time we meet up in between property and passive income, business and purpose coaching, digital work and freelancing, and investing in crypto and forex. Okay. How many of you think that's a good idea? Pop a triple one in the chat group if you think, yep, that's a good thing that we can test out, pick up what lanes you like, start to diversify into certain areas, but also be very focused on one thing. So at the moment, I have people ask me if I want to jump into new things, and I've said no. I'm just focused on my academy and capture your purpose and serving the members here, which are all of you amazing people. But at the same time, I still have my properties running. I still have my crypto investments going. Still have my business ideas moving. But I'm not going to jump into something brand new that needs new energy because I'm focused on this. So what am I saying? Learn to diversify, but stay really clearly focused on certain one thing that you can build big with, and that'll become your expertise. So property and passive income. Um, where is Patrick? Is Patrick still here? Patrick,
Yes, I'm here.
read the bottom of it, bro.
CaptureYourPurpose.com.
I love that. Every time you talk to Patrick, every now and again he'll just go, "What?"
CaptureYourPurpose.com.
And every time he doesn't like you, or he thinks you've forgotten who, not doesn't like, he doesn't like something you say, and you've forgotten who you are, he says,
CaptureYourPurpose.com.
amazing. It was a round sequence that happened, so what can we say? All right, family, we're going to deep dive into today's talk. It's going to go for about 20 minutes, and I just want you to think about property from maybe you've never heard this, maybe you have, maybe you've heard certain aspects, but it's one of the most practical and powerful lanes of wealth creation. All right. Property and passive income, whether you rent, own, or are dreaming of your first property. So it doesn't matter whether you don't own a property, it doesn't matter, and it's great if you do. Either way, this is for you, this information. So I want to show you how this isn't just about buying houses, it's about stewarding and multiplying what you already have. Okay. Here's the big idea. You don't have to own 10 houses to start generating income through property. You just need to think differently, think kingdom, think creatively, think values. Now, is Joseph here? Oh, yes, Joseph, I can see you. Joseph, can you hear us? This is really,
Yeah.
bro. Some added ideas to what you were looking at with your renting. All right. So, just out of curiosity, on the chat group, how many people here have ever thought of doing something with property? I know, Aranka, we spoke about it with you, but how many people have thought about doing something in property? Put it, in the chat group, or I saw Patrick wave his hand. Um, Shamim, excellent. Okay, and a few of you I know have some properties, which is exciting. We want to just see how we can sharpen that as well. I'm not a big fan of negative gearing, for those who know what that is, where we are always in deficit to try and lower your employee income because it's maybe high. What I'm looking at is how do we create something that you can use to generate income for the future and keep running with that. Okay. So here's some three ideas I want to share with you. And I want you to just think about even without buying more. So increase what you already have. Okay. Question: how can I increase the value or income potential of what I already live in or rent out? So examples: rent out a room for short stays. All right. So if you're living and you got an extra room, why don't you put on Airbnb? Give it a try. You don't have to. It's not a long-term commitment. It's just trial and error. Okay. I remember I was in Canada 2 years ago transiting, and I stayed in an Airbnb that was a shared accommodation with a guy who had a spare room. And although I was meant to get some rest before I had to wake up at 4 in the morning, I got there at about 7 at night, and I didn't get sleep till 2 in the morning because I was just having an amazing chat with this young fella who has been doing the Airbnb stuff, and it's helped him pay for his university education. So you never know what extra income can do for you, and maybe that's something you could think about. Convert a garage or granny flat for rental. Obviously, look at the rules around it in the area you live, but why can't you do that? Or you can use it as one of the potential things we looked at with a garage was using it as a storage space. So someone would pay, I think, was paying about $100 a week on storage space, and a garage was literally $200 a month, $150 a month, and that still brought in extra income that was added to the rest of the house. Okay, so what's $150 a month? That's over $1,000 a year, 1,200 plus. That's, maybe paying for one of your bills. Um, Use your space for workshops, meetings, or even photo shoots. So many people are sitting on assets they don't even recognize. What you call your home, someone else sees as an opportunity. Okay. So I want you to just think for a few minutes, and I'll give you an opportunity after I share these three sections to kind of think about what are some ideas you can do with where you're staying, because everyone's staying somewhere, right? What about partnering with others? If you can't afford a property alone, what if you partner wisely? Find people in the inner circle or local community to co-invest or co-rent. Look into vendor finance or rent to own opportunities. Ownership is powerful, but partnership is often the key that unlocks the door. All right. And again, I'd say go in with caution, but at the same time, these are opportunities that you can work with. I know back about 15 years ago, I looked into this idea of renting to buy as helping other people in opportunities where they could, we buy a house, they rent from me, but overall they pay towards owning the house. And yes, they might pay a little bit more than they would if they get a loan from the bank, but they could eventually own their own property just by upping their rent a little bit more. And that's a great opportunity if it all works out for both sides. But you could do that yourself as well and just think through that idea. Thirdly, increase value through strategic improvements. Not all renovations are expensive. So simple upgrades like painting, lighting, landscaping, adding Wi-Fi work from home zones. So all these can increase rental income or resale value. Okay. One of our properties, January, we had in December, most of the people leave. So got in one of my handymen and they repainted the place, and I was able to rent the place out for 40% more the next year. That's a huge increase, and that made such a big difference. Okay. So in the kingdom, little adjustments can create big impact. Okay, and that's the same in the natural world of what we do. So I want to just open this up to you guys for a moment and say, give me some thoughts on, have you tried any of this? Have you thought about this? What's an idea that might be helpful? I want you to unmute and just give me some information around this, and give me some feedback of is this helping you think about how you can increase, even just an extra $50 a week? Will it make a difference?
Ruben, I've been thinking about whatever when I sell this place and move on. My plan is to look for something where that I could rent out or create an Airbnb.
Beautiful.
Um, yeah, so find a property that maybe has an extra, you know, I don't know, another room built onto the property, or whether there could be another entrance created so that I wouldn't want it to be really impacting my day-to-day life. So it has to be something where it could be cut off from the rest of the house so that's what I've got going on in my mind. I've had that for a while.
Beautiful. That's a great idea. I've seen some properties where they have double story and separate entrance, and it's got its own kitchen ups in the upstairs story as it has on the downstairs, and it's almost like a self-contained. And I know
Yeah.
with bigger families, people tended to have some of those in certain suburbs. It's not in every suburb, but I know definitely around the areas where it was heavily in Springvale, where I used to live, it was heavily Greek populated at one stage, and they would have these double uh, story houses where the kitchen was self-contained upstairs, where grandpa and grandma might live, and then the parents or the grandchildren live downstairs. And that was a really powerful. That could be that could be an opportunity for an Airbnb upstairs.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, so Great idea. And I think it's good you're forward thinking. So when you do buy the next property, you're thinking, okay, this is something that could bring some income in.
Yeah.
Something that I haven't written here, though, I don't know if anyone's thought of, is homestay. Looking at homestay students 1 to 3, they can pay up to $400 to $500 a week. It includes all the yes, it includes all the bills and providing meals. But that's a significant amount of income. If you had a 4 bedroom house where you had 3 rooms, you were happy to do some homestay where you're helping those students as well. And if you're getting 400 a week times 3, that's what, $1,200 a week times 52 weeks is $62,400. People think that could be a worthwhile opportunity as well.
My sister has actually done similar to that. She's had I don't know what they come under. They often come from Asia. They're working for certain periods of time, often on farms, things like that. They're,
Right.
I
Oh,
think,
yeah.
visas.
I don't know what they're called, but yes, I know who you're talking about. The work, is it the work something visas, work tourist visa or something?
Yes, working tourist visas, and she's had some really, really great ones. She's also, well, the ones that have been the worst ones have generally been the locals that have needed somewhere, and she's said okay, and then they've turned out to be really bad. She's had, washing machine ruined. She's had a few things in the kitchen ruined. So you have to be really careful. You don't really want to be sharing a kitchen, but you want them to have facilities that are going to be reasonable, that they can cook and things like that. So things like sharing your facilities can be a problem because they don't always look after things the way you would, and because it's not their own. So
Yeah.
there are things to, take into consideration.
Yeah. Yeah.
You've certainly done well by doing that.
Beautiful. So, I mean, guys, even if it's an extra, say, $200 a week, how much is that in a year? If we multiply that by 52, or let's just say 48, because I normally like to say let's keep 4 weeks free. That's an extra just under $10,000 a year by making use of a spare room. Okay. And it just kind of thought process around some of this that might be useful to you. Um, Other people, what about others? Thanks, Margaret, for that. That's great. Because I want you guys to spur each other on, maybe come up with ideas, maybe say what you have been doing or what you're thinking of doing. And I think that'll be a really big help for one another today.
Airbnbs. Um, I've stayed in a single bedroom studio out the back of a house before,
Right.
where they'd actually put a spa bath in there. It was only a kitchenette, so it didn't have, you know, cooking facilities. The idea was to just go out to restaurants for dinner, but
Mm.
had all the coffee machine there, the spa, beautiful bay window out looking over a park. Um, so it was really nice, beautiful garden in the back as well. But yeah, the owners just lived in their house and had the single studio at the back with the double bed.
Mm. Yeah, it's the way to go. My niece over in New Zealand, she lives in Wellington. They have this beautiful two-story place that they bought off his parents. It overlooks the Wellington Harbour, so it is pretty incredible scenery and views, and they're very close to the centre of everything. But they've done a similar thing. They've made this area downstairs. He's a builder. He's cut off an area where there's 2 bedrooms, a bathroom, a lounge area, and they've got a setup for tea and coffee making facilities. And again, it's set up so that people would stay there for maybe a night or 2 nights over a weekend, go and see shows and go out for dinners and things like that. And they're getting lots of repeat customers and they're constantly busy. I mean, she has to work really hard to keep up with it. She's also working. Well, no, at the moment she's just had a baby, so she's not working. But before she had the baby, she was working full time as a teacher as well. And she had to just be on the ball constantly to keep all the linen, the beds done, the rooms ready, because there was constant work, constant interest in people wanting to stay there, and they have made huge amount of money out of that.
Amazing, amazing. Yeah, and sometimes you got to make sure that you don't get to a place where it's too much. So, as in
That's
too much.
right. You don't want it to be so overwhelming that, you can hardly keep up with it. Yeah. So it's finding that sweet spot, I guess, isn't it?
Absolutely.
Mm.
Kingdom Capitalist. So, Nathan, you're saying this is down my alley, rooms, tiny house, garage conversions. Yeah, you've been doing a lot of this stuff recently. You want to share a little bit about what you're doing? And again, that could um, spark someone else. Nathan, you there?
Hello, hello.
Hello, hello.
Yeah, absolutely. So, well, for anyone who doesn't know, this kind of stuff I've been doing with Ruben, like he's been talking about this stuff for a long time. And so, yeah, just implementing some of these things myself, in terms of being able to be creative with room renting solutions, and especially down the aspect of being able to do it without capital, as Ruben talks about, in the fact that I've been able to get an agreement with my landlord to be able to do renting out rooms. So I'm able to utilize this strategy without even having to buy a property, obviously have a deposit, all that rigmarole, because of, trust and agreement, to be able to rent out rooms, which has to offset things, and also have, a couple of tiny home buses, which can function as spare rooms or offices, and have been places that we've rented out in the past to produce income. So yeah, just all this stuff is, just way down my alley.
Mm.
I think you got to a place where you didn't have to pay rent and then you were making money, right? So you were renting, but you got to a spot where you didn't have to pay the rent and there was more income coming in from it. So you were living rent free. And
Yeah,
just
absolutely. And having the bills paid. It does kind of fluctuate though. I haven't had a full kind of house, so to speak, like permanently. So it kind of goes through seasons, which currently at the moment, I'm looking for a spot. So if anyone here is looking for a room to rent, but yeah, definitely, like it works. I've experienced it, and I tell you what, guys, my goodness, when you have passive income, simple passive income that's regularly coming in every week or monthly, however you do it, it's such a blessing. It's just such an absolute blessing. And again, without having to even go through the aspects of buying a property, getting a deposit, going through all of that. So yeah, thanks Ruben so much for just all of your wisdom in this area, and for even just showing me what you've done with your places and this sort of stuff. Props.
Nathan, can I just ask, did you say bus rooms or room buses, the buses that you've turned into a room, is that right?
Yeah, pretty much. So originally, I before I yeah, long story short, yes, we've got a couple of buses. One of them is a full blown bus converted into a home. The other one is a dedicated RV.
Okay. And you've got them on the property as well.
Yeah. Thankfully, my property permits. So I've just got a huge driveway that goes right from pretty much the front of the property all the way down the back.
Yeah.
And so, not all properties permit that. But yeah, in terms of, doing a garage conversion or a flat pack style build, a granny flat in the backyard, buses are awesome because they're a bit of a kind of legal loop for a lot of councils, in that because they're on wheels, they're not considered permanent structures. They can obviously be driven around and stuff. And so it eases up a lot of the kind of rules to some degree. Obviously, it's every council is different and your own discretion with these things. And and then you just connect up services to them, which is just basically water and grey water, like water in and grey water out.
Yeah. Yeah. Sounds great.
Yeah.
very, very exciting. So, can we, who knew that Nathan was doing that? And for those who now know, you got someone who's actually getting some results from it, and it gives you some ideas, right? Absolutely.
My perfect plan would be to find something that has a granny flat already,
Yep.
and then be able to rent it, fix that up, and make it comfortable. And then they'd have a separate entrance perhaps as well, so that it just makes it a lot more private for them as well as the people, for the person who's living there permanently. One of my dear friends in Perth, she used to do Airbnb for a long time over in Perth. Nearly sent her husband bereft because he didn't like it at all, but she loved it and she was making lots of money before I guess before the um, minerals started to deplete and Perth started to drop down a bit financially. But she did really, really well. She changed a lot of their bedrooms into units, and like she had a big house and she had space to do this. And she's kind of eccentric, and she'd say to me, "Oh, well, Margaret, if I like them, I'll invite them to dinner. And if I don't, well, they don't get an invitation." So she just had this sort of little plan, these rules around how she was doing things. And then at one stage she she already had an outdoor area, but then she put one of those windows in the kitchen that she could pass through food so that, she'd offer bacon and egg, sort of breakfast for
Wow.
whoever wanted that. And then they could sit out in the beautiful Perth sunshine and have their breakfast. Um, yeah, so she did that for ages, but then eventually it wore her down a bit. I think it was pretty full on, and then it slowed down. But she did really well out of that. Mm.
Love that. Now, I do know that there are a couple of people here, and some who couldn't, one who couldn't make it, but they're in a similar spot who are looking for rental properties who are single. So if you're by yourself and you're looking for a rental property, it's worth looking into the idea of getting a four-bedroom house. And it might be like, I can't afford that. But if you think about a four-bedroom to three-bedroom to a two-bedroom, there's not huge amounts of differences in income of money per week if you calculate the fact that you could rent out three of the rooms or two of the rooms. Now, again, you have to be somebody who's willing to have other people live with you and stuff. So it's not for everybody, but it's just a thought process to think about how you can use property in an innovative way to do something like that. And just do the numbers. And it's actually not so hard. Like today in the digital world, you can just put an ad on Facebook Marketplace. I literally within minutes get dozens of inquiries. And then I have a little template that I copy and paste to every inquiry that just tells them what I'm looking for. And then the ones who respond, I'll then have a conversation with them. And then I'll give them my number on WhatsApp. I'll have an interview with them on the phone. I'll take them to the property to have a look at. And I only need to get three people or four people in, depending on how many rooms you have available, for that 1 year contract. So it's a little bit of effort at the start. And then after that, they're in a WhatsApp group. They sign a contract, they pay their bond, they pay their rental. They're on a WhatsApp group. And if there's any problems, they can give you a call for your maintenance, right? If you're in the house, you can do it yourself. If you find that you want to be a bit more adventurous, just get a one house and try it without you living in it, right? So and again, be aware of the rules around things. But if you don't treat this as even though it's like a business, don't treat it as a business in that sense. Treat it more as let me just test this out, have a community home, and just start testing something. If it works, you're taking a contract just for a year normally with the owner. If you're renting, you can ask them. Yes, I was just about to answer that question. Great question, Oscar. Yes, you can get permission. You've got to get permission from the landlord, but part of the contract deal is that the landlord cannot refuse you without a genuine reason. So you can ask the landlord, can I get co-tenants in? And I'll still be in charge of the rent regardless. And the landlord can't unless they have a very good reason, which is very rare, they have to say yes. So it's possible to do that. And so those are some things that is really worth looking into. For others who are looking to buy property, it may be worth, if you're about to buy a property, rather than buying a three-bedroom, you might go, let me just go a four-bedroom or five-bedroom. There might be a $20,000, $30,000 difference or a $70,000 difference. But if you calculate the fact that you could potentially rent out a couple of rooms or use it for something to produce income over the next 10 years, it'll be much more worth the value of in that way, right? On the other hand, don't go buying because some people go buy a 9 bedroom house. Hard to sell, the value doesn't go up as high. All right. If you're not going to ever sell it, that's a different matter. But if we normally say every 7 to 10 years, properties double in value. Okay, so don't go buy. I've had a few people do that in the past. Buy a 9 bedroom or an 18 bedroom. They get all excited about this sort of stuff, and it's not. I wouldn't do that. That's a way overkill. All right. What about others? Any other thoughts before we finish off?
I
What?
just want to add, Ruben, that I did share with you already that I did rent a big townhouse about more than 10 years ago, and I was there for 10 years and I rented out rooms. And what was good about it for me though was that the the owner paid for anything that broke down,
Yes, correct.
and that's a bonus.
Absolutely. Yep. So I love that. So for those who don't know, I was like from 2000 for 10 years. I was doing room rental. So it was my website was called roomtorent.com, and I was renting. I couldn't own all the properties, so I instead because after I did the first two, I got inundated by people. So I got 15 properties in the first 7 months, 10 properties in the first 7 months, sorry, and then managed 15 properties, and most of them were rental properties. And the great thing was, yes, as Aranka said, the owners fixed everything up. But I also had a great relationship with everyone. So that's kind of important. Customer service is very important. I didn't just get anyone and everyone. I interviewed people, made sure they could afford it. I made a lot of mistakes as well, getting the wrong people in, having problems, and then realizing not to do that. Having, sorry for all the women here, but an only girls' house, whew, don't do that. Still till today, not a good idea. But having mixed house or just boys was a much better deal. I don't know why, but it's just the way it is. Girls don't get on well with each other when they're renting rooms for some reason, and they don't keep the place neat. So learned a lot from all of that stuff, and but it was possible for 10 years. It was a very good opportunity, and it's still, I think, till today is still a really good opportunity for you guys to look at. If you're looking at buying real estate and you have rental properties, this is another great way to look at do the numbers. I converted a 3 bedroom into a 4 bedroom. It did really well for 4 years, and then I just realized that the lounge was not being used. Now, I'm not a big fan of uh, putting too many rooms in a house. I want people to have space. But the lounge was not being used for a whole 2 years, and over the 4 year period, it only got used couple of times over the other 2 years. So I talked to everyone in the house and I said, "Can I convert it into a bedroom?" And they said, "Yeah, that's fine. We don't mind," because they had another living space in around the dining area. So the 3 bedroom became a 4 bedroom, which became then a 5 bedroom. And plus, I would have thought, you instinctively think you got to bring the rental down. Quite the opposite, increase the rental by 30%, and had better, genuine quality people in there who've stayed for a couple of them have stayed for over 2 years, which is an unusual thing around the type of area, and the people you normally would have would be there for a year and then they move on, or 6 months. So think about your current investment properties for those who do have investment properties. I know a couple of you here that do. Do the numbers, do the math. See if you can put an extra room in. It's not too cluttered, and then see if there's enough room and space for you to do that, and just spreadsheet it. And if you don't know how to spreadsheet, talk to Hannah. Right? I feel like Hannah's about to unmute and say something cheeky. Yeah, no, what's going on?
It's double muting. Yeah, I just said, yep, I love a good spreadsheet.
You do. It's like someone who says, "I love a good apple pie," like Joseph always says, he steals my apple pies. You love a good spreadsheet, right? Why not?
Yeah, I will go for a chocolate cake, but mud cake. Yeah, you can have your apple pies.
Beautiful. Just before we